You did everything by the numbers. You watched the migration data come out. You saw billions of dollars moving from New York and Chicago into South Florida. You told yourself this was the moment. The smart money was flowing in. Home prices were about to go vertical. And then you looked at the actual data. Miami home prices fell 4.2% this year. West Palm Beach gained less than 1%. And the high-earning newcomers everyone assumed would drive a buying boom are signing leases instead of purchase contracts. Something does not add up. And when data does not add up, that is exactly where Housing Intel goes to work. Before we get into this, subscribe to Housing Intel if you have not already. The data we are about to cover is moving fast, and the window to act on it is short. Subscribers get every report the moment it drops. Hit subscribe. Now, let us look at what is actually happening. My name is David Cole. I am the editor-in-chief of Housing Intel. This channel covers the real estate market using verified data from Zillow, Redfin, Atom, CoreLogic, the FHFA, the IRS, and other authoritative sources. We tell you what the numbers actually show before those numbers reach the mainstream conversation. Today, we are going inside the South Florida migration paradox. The income is real. The migration is real. But the housing market is not responding the way conventional wisdom predicted. Here is what the data actually tells us. The first point is the scale of the income migration into South Florida, and it is unlike anything this region has seen in modern history. According to newly released IRS data, the state of Florida netted $20.65 billion in annual adjusted gross income from tax filers who relocated between 2019 and 2023. That is not gross income from all residents. That is net new income, the money that physically moved from other states into Florida during that 4-year window. Greater Miami alone absorbed $10.5 billion of that total. To put that in concrete terms for the average homeowner, that is more capital relocating into a single metro than the GDP of many mid-sized nations. And by 2023, the average out-of-state mover arriving in Miami was earning $178,382 per year. These are not retirees on fixed incomes stretching a pension. These are working professionals, finance workers, private equity investors, and entrepreneurs arriving with serious earning power and, in theory, serious buying power. The implication for homeowners in the region seemed obvious. This wave of high-income arrivals would absorb inventory, drive prices upward, and deliver the kind of sustained appreciation that turns a coastal property into generational wealth. That is not what happened. And the reason why tells you everything about where this market is actually headed. The second point is the price data, and it directly contradicts the narrative that income migration automatically equals home price appreciation. According to data from Realtor.com, Miami home prices fell 4.2% over the past year. West Palm Beach, another major hub of this migration wave, posted price growth of just 0.9% over the same period. These are not numbers from a market in free fall, but they are not the appreciation story that the migration narrative predicted either. For current homeowners who bought during the peak years of 2021 and 2022, flat or declining prices create a specific and serious problem. Anyone who purchased near the top of that market is now sitting on reduced equity, potentially struggling to refinance at favorable terms, and competing in a sale market that is not delivering the exit prices they planned for. Redfin data shows that price cut frequency has been rising across South Florida metros as sellers adjust to the reality that the buyers they expected, the high-earning newcomers, are not showing up at the closing table the way the headlines suggested they would. The income migrated. The buying did not follow. That gap is where the real story lives. The third point is the rent versus buy math, and it explains exactly why six-figure earners are signing leases instead of purchase contracts. Realtor.com senior economist Jiayi Xu calculated that at the peak of the migration surge in 2023, renting a typical Miami starter home cost $2,511 per month. Buying that same home, at the mortgage rates that prevailed at that time, would have resulted in a monthly payment of $3,540. That is a 41% premium to own versus rent on an entry-level property. Now factor in the income data. The average arriving migrant was earning $178,000 per year. A $3,540 monthly mortgage payment on an entry-level home would have consumed nearly 24% of gross household income before taxes, insurance, HOA fees, or maintenance costs. For a household with that income, renting at $2,500 a month represented a rational financial decision, not a failure of ambition or confidence in the market. The math made renting the smarter short-term play, and the data shows that high-earning households across the country are making the same calculation. According to the American Community Survey, the share of households earning at least $100,000 per year that are renting rose from 18% in 2019 to 24% in 2024 nationally. High earners are choosing flexibility over commitment in a rate environment that still heavily penalizes buyers relative to renters in high-cost metros. The implication for South Florida homeowners is direct. The buying pressure you were counting on to lift your home value is being absorbed into the rental market instead. Before we get to the next point, leave a comment below telling us which market you are watching right now. We read every comment, and your input shapes the reports we publish next. And if you know someone thinking about buying or selling in South Florida, share this video with them. It could save them from a very costly mistake. The fourth point is what the luxury rental market data reveals about where demand is actually concentrating, and it is not where most homeowners are positioned. While home price appreciation has stalled across the South Florida region, upper mid-range rental rates are holding firm, and in some submarkets are still climbing. According to the most recent rental report from Miami Realtors, overall rents in Miami rose 0.6% year-over-year. Upper mid-range rents rose 0.7% over the same period. In West Palm Beach, while overall rents increased 0.9%, upper mid-range rents increased 1.6%. The gap between these numbers matters. The new arrivals are not renting the entry-level inventory. They are absorbing the premium rental product, the high-end apartments and luxury rentals in the urban cores of Miami and West Palm Beach. This is concentrating rental demand in a segment of the market that does not create buying pressure on the for-sale inventory that most homeowners occupy. A private equity professional earning $180,000 per year renting a luxury downtown apartment is not a potential buyer of a suburban single-family home in Broward County or St. Lucie County. They are a different kind of demand entirely, and confusing the two is how homeowners and investors have misread the South Florida story. The income wave is real, but it is being absorbed by a specific slice of the market. The rest of the for-sale inventory is not seeing the benefit. The fifth point is the office market data, and it is the most important indicator for understanding where South Florida is actually headed over the next 3 to 5 years. According to an analysis from Miami Realtors using data from CoStar, Miami's office vacancy rate in February 2026 stood at 12.8%. The national office vacancy rate at the same time was 17.6%. West Palm Beach and Miami posted the lowest office vacancy rates among the nation's largest markets. Class A and Class A+ office lease rates in the Miami market have risen 64% cumulatively since 2019. In 2025, major lease signings in the market included firms such as Amazon, ADP, Assurant, Uber, and Sidley Austin. These are not speculative commitments. These are large-scale, long-term lease decisions made by companies with real estate teams and market analysts running thorough due diligence. When institutional employers are signing decade-long leases at premium rates in a market, they are voting with hard capital that the labor pool, the infrastructure, and the business environment justify the commitment. For homeowners in South Florida, the office market data is the signal that cuts through the noise of month-to-month price fluctuations. It says that the employment base supporting the migration wave is not temporary. The firms that came are building roots. The income is not going back to New York. And that sustained employment base is what ultimately converts renters into buyers over time. The question for homeowners is not whether the market is sound in the long run. The question is how long the rent versus buy math takes to shift in favor of purchasing, and what happens to your equity position while you wait. The sixth point is the psychological dynamic driving this market, and it is something the standard price data does not fully capture. Many of the professionals who arrived in South Florida during the migration wave came without certainty about how long they would stay. As Jiayi Xu of Realtor.com explains, uncertainty kept high earners renting. They arrived in a new city, often relocating from established professional networks in New York or Chicago, and they chose to test the market before committing to a purchase. This dynamic created a specific kind of tenant, price-insensitive, willing to pay premium rents, but not yet ready to absorb inventory from the for-sale market. Austin Laban, a private equity investor who relocated from Chicago to Miami last year, described the decision as making a bet on the city without locking himself in. He rented a downtown apartment for himself, his wife, and his newborn. He expects to buy later, but not yet. Multiply that story across the tens of thousands of similar arrivals, and you start to understand why home prices are soft despite the income wave. The conviction in Miami is real. The belief that the city is becoming a new financial hub is genuine. But conviction and a purchase contract are two different things. Right now, the market is full of people who believe in South Florida enough to move their families there, but not yet enough to buy a home. When that calculation shifts, and the data suggests it will, the release of that pent-up demand could create a sharp upward move in prices. The timing is the variable that no model can predict with certainty. Now for the conclusion, and what the data actually tells you if you own property in South Florida or are considering buying there. The South Florida migration story is not a myth. The IRS data is real. $20 billion in annual adjusted gross income relocated into Florida between 2019 and 2023. The firms signing leases in Miami are real. The labor pool is real. The fundamentals are stronger here than in most Sunbelt markets that overbuilt luxury supply and are now seeing rents fall 7 or 8%, as Austin and Phoenix have experienced. But the near-term housing market is being shaped by a rent versus buy math problem that the income migration alone cannot solve. As long as buying an entry-level home costs 40% more per month than renting it, the high-earning newcomers will remain renters. Their demand will continue to flow into the luxury rental sector rather than the for-sale market. And home prices in the broader South Florida region will face continued pressure. For homeowners holding property in South Florida right now, the data says this is not the moment to assume that the migration wave will automatically rescue your equity position on a short timeline. The structural case for the market is intact. But the conversion from renter demand to buyer demand takes time, and that time is not free. If your financial plan depends on appreciation over the next 12 to 24 months, the numbers suggest you should stress test that assumption carefully before making decisions. For anyone watching this who is considering buying in South Florida, the data makes a specific case for patience. The rent versus buy premium is still significant. The for-sale market is not under immediate upward pressure, And the buyers who wait for the math to shift in their favor will likely enter at better prices than those who buy into the current narrative before the data has fully aligned with it. The South Florida market is real, but the timeline is longer than the headlines suggest, and that gap between the story and the data is exactly what Housing Intel exists to show you. Housing Intel publishes 3 reports every week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Every one of them is built on verified data, not speculation, not opinion, not real estate industry talking points. Subscribe if you want the full picture, and share this video if someone you care about needs to hear it. We will be back with more.